This episode mentions suicide and may be triggering for some listeners.
Did you know that Jesus Calling has its own YouTube channel? It's full of great content that will enhance your spiritual life. You'll find beautiful videos with short devotional moments to help you through your day, as well as stories on video from celebrities, authors, pastors, and everyday people who share what their faith journey has meant to them. You'll also find the Jesus Listens Stories of Prayer series hosted by Susie McIntyre Eaton, featuring new guests monthly. Subscribe today for new videos each week.
I felt God just lean in and just say to me, "Your faith has always come from me, and I've always been with you. And it's okay for you to not trust me right now, because I'm right here." And over time, my faith, it actually began to rebuild in a new way, more alive than before.
Welcome to the Jesus Calling podcast. This week, we'll hear from Erin Leigh Nelson, founding executive director of Jessica's House, a grief support center for children, teens, young adults, and their families coping with the loss of a parent or sibling. Erin's story is marked by deep personal loss, waves of tragedy that shaped her life, and inspired a mission to help others heal. Through heartbreak and resilience, she's found a way to create a space where young hearts can find hope, expression, and connection. Later in the episode, we'll hear from Allie Marie Smith, a writer, speaker, mental health advocate, and founder of Wonderfully Made, a nonprofit that helps young women discover their worth. Once a high-achieving student and athlete, Allie faced a battle with depression and trauma that reshaped her path. Let's begin with Erin's story.
My name is Erin Nelson, and I'm the founding executive director of a grief support center called Jessica's House. And Jessica's House supports children, teens, young adults, and their parents after the death of a parent or sibling. I live in the Central Valley of California with my husband, Brian, and we have 4 children, 3 who are living, 1 who is waiting for us in heaven, and I have 10 grandchildren. In 1995, I was a young mom of 2 children, and they were 5 and 3. Tyler was an almond farmer and processor, and we were just starting our life in our family business when he wanted to go on a trip to Alaska with his friends to go fishing. And I was visiting Tyler's parents when a 3 a.m. phone call startled me awake. And I don't know why, but I didn't say hello. I just picked up the phone and asked what happened. And Tyler's brother, Gary, told me that Tyler's plane had been involved in a midair collision and that there were no survivors. And those words, no survivors, they just kind of went over and over in my mind as I picked my children up out of bed, carrying my 3-year-old Cody down the stairs and going out into the cold air of the night and just stuffing him into his car seat and his footy pajamas. And driving home that day, I remember just driving and watching the sunrise over the Monterey farmland and feeling, how are all these people driving when something this terrible happened? And at the same time, I felt a very warm, comforting presence that I had never known. A few months after Tyler's death, my mom, who lived with bipolar disorder, died of suicide. And it was one of the darkest times of my life. I felt a fragility that was just so hard to live with. And something about my mom's death was that I wanted to talk about her like I did after Tyler died and also share in our sorrow. But I sensed that it was really hard for other people to come around that death and to talk about her. I wanted to talk about her life and how she would scoop up a spider in a tissue and let it outside. And she was so gentle and she was fun and so funny. And I wanted to remember how she slapped her knee when she laughs. And I just wanted to remember her as my mom. My sister was 15 at the time, and she came to live with the kids and I. And it's when I first started to notice how teens and children process grief. Over time, I met an amazing guy from our church, and we were working together in the youth group, and we married and added 2 children to our family. Our first child, his name was Carter. He was just such a gift because I had experienced such a long season of darkness, and I felt like he was just this bright light. As he grew up, he had just a love for cars, and he loved music, and he loved to lead worship at our church. One night when Carter was 20 years old, my husband shook me awake and told me that Carter had been involved in an accident. And it was another phone call that just changed my reality. And it was such a difficult time. And I remember just driving to the hospital, just praying. And you never really think that the unimaginable will touch your family. I had been serving children and families for about 10 years at that point, and maybe there was a part of me that felt like I wouldn't have another death come home for us. But throughout the course of the day, we learned that his injuries were not survivable. So we gathered as a family around him to say goodbye. My faith after Tyler's death and after my mom's death was steady, and it felt like such a lifeline. But after Carter died, I just had this sense that I felt just unsafe in the world. I wondered where God was and if He noticed, and I had prayed so much for protection for my children. And I went into a raw place of grief. They say that another parent that has lost a child, it's like there's a key that they hold to their heart. It's like a passport in some way of coming alongside and having an understanding. And I experienced that new understanding. One morning, I sent a text to a friend who had also experienced the death of her child. And I said, I feel like I'm falling into the darkness. And she texted back, the darkness will hold you. And I experienced this beholding of love that was so deep, and it was beautiful in some way, because I had this feeling of God surrounding me even in the darkness. And even as I was held by God's love, I knew that He understood that I didn't understand. There are so many parts of living earthside that are a mystery for all of us. I felt God just lean in and just say to me, your faith has always come from me, and I've always been with you. And it's okay for you to not trust me right now, because I'm right here. And over time, my faith, it actually began to rebuild in a new way, more alive than before. Jesus Calling was a devotional that meant so much to me. And it struck me as a very different type of devotional because it was written, it seemed like, right to me. It brought me so much strength. And it felt like, especially for a grieving heart like mine, it was exactly what I needed. And it brought so much comfort and strength because the words seemed to be just right for what I needed. Connecting with God every day was my lifeline, and I remember even sleeping with my Bible after Tyler died, with my children on my right and left side, and just holding on to scriptures like God is the father to the fatherless, and He's my strong tower. He's the defender of widows. To hold on to His promises, to know that He is there. And I adopted a practice of just sitting in silence in God's love for 10 minutes every morning. I think it really did increase my intimacy with Him because I was able to be so honest and be in a place of unbelief for as long as it took. And as I went on, it really deepened my desire to help others who were grieving. A lot of people may not understand that there's such a fragility and loss after someone experiences a profound loss in their life, especially for a child who experiences the death of their sibling or their parent. Many times they will worry about their surviving parent or sibling. It's like they learn that really terrible things happen on this earth, and they may develop some anxiety about what could happen next. And if a child does not have support, they do have risk factors, even early mortality. And those risk factors for their mental, emotional, and physical health really can make an impact on their life if they don't have support. The really good news is that there's something that is well researched. It's called post-traumatic growth. And what we know for a child, and you can kind of think of it as a young tree that receives sunshine and water and nutrients, and maybe their roots wrap around other trees. They keep them stable in the storms. When a child has that support, when they can express what they're going through, when they can find ways of expression through art and music and play, they are more likely to experience that post-traumatic growth. And it sparked in me a desire to come alongside others who are grieving. And that's when this idea came into my mind to support other children and families who were grieving in my community. I first started ministering in my church, and then I learned about the Dougie Center in Portland, Oregon, and they had a model of grief support for children and families. And I gathered with others in my community to bring that grief support to our area. A young girl in our community who had lived with leukemia for several years before she died, she was so generous to others. She would go to the hospital and learn that others had financial needs, and she would create art, and she would sell it at her school and take those funds back to the families that she had met in the hospital. And she wanted to do good in her short life. After her death, I was friends with her parents, and our oldest children were friends, and it was natural to call this ministry Jessica's House. We've been open 13 years. We have some of our youngest grievers who came into our program in 2012 who are now in college, and they are pursuing helping fields. I had one young woman who was a child in our program recently tell me that she's coming for my job, and I really hope that that happens someday. We developed an acronym called CARE, and C is for caring for your body with healthy food and water and movement, maybe stretching and walking outdoors. And then the A is for accepting support now and always. The R is for resting often and keeping normal routines as much as possible because they stabilize children and families. And then the E is for express your emotions with others as they arise. And we often say that you have to express your grief the way you feel it. And it's a very organic process. What we found at Jessica's house is that if you don't take the time to be with your healing, to surrender to the grief process that God has placed in each of us, then sometimes we can miss the depth of how much healing we can discover for ourselves. And so we don't ever want to skip over that grief process.
To learn more about Erin Leigh Nelson, visit jessicashouse.org and be sure to check out her new book, When Grief Comes Home, a gentle guide for living through loss while supporting your child, at your favorite retailer. Stay tuned to Allie Marie Smith's story after a brief message. Hey everyone, this is Faith Broussard-Cade, your host for the 4th season of Jesus Calling, Stories of Faith on Up TV. We're so excited to bring you inspiring stories of people from all walks of life who have turned to their faith in times of struggle and in times of joy. We're going to hear from some extraordinary guests this season, including Julie Chen Moonves, who you might know as the host of Big Brother. We'll also be joined by NFL Hall of Famer Terry Bradshaw and light heavyweight champion boxer Andre Ward. Grammy Award-winning gospel singer B.B. Winans, the world-renowned Italian tenor Andrea Bocelli, and actress Taraji P. Henson, in addition to many others. And of course, you'll get to hear more about me and my story too. I can't wait to see you there. Tune into these inspiring stories on Up TV. Our next guest, Allie Marie Smith, is a speaker, life coach, and the visionary behind Wonderfully Made, which champions for young women to embrace their self-worth and prioritize mental well-being. Despite outward appearances of a perfect life, Allie secretly struggled with depression from an early age. Her personal journey of overcoming adversity, finding healing, and rediscovering herself now inspires her to guide others toward a hopeful existence.
I am Allie Marie Smith. I am a speaker, a life coach, a podcaster, and I'm the founder and CEO of Wonderfully Made, a ministry for girls and women. And I love writing books, and I live in Santa Barbara County with my amazing husband, Paul, and our golden retriever, Gidget. I grew up in Silicon Valley and I had wonderful parents and a bright future. I was super feisty and confident, and I was always outside adventuring and playing sports. And I always believed in God and I saw Him in the beauty of creation all around me, but I didn't understand that I could really have a friendship with Him. When I turned 12, I began to experience these uninvited feelings of loneliness, unworthiness, and sadness. And I really felt like I didn't have a reason to be sad and it didn't make sense. And that only made it worse. I started high school with really big hopes and dreams. On the outside, I was, a straight A student. I was a standout soccer player. I had a lot of friends and I looked happy and I wore a nice smile. And to people, everyone around me, even my parents, it really looked like I had it all together. But every day was a battle and I was struggling silently and no one knew. The way I coped was I hustled for my worth and I pushed back against the depression through overachieving and through perfectionism. My junior year, when I was 17, something extremely traumatic happened to me that I never told anyone about for over 15 years. And because of so many different complex factors like the trauma and unhealed wounds, hormonal imbalances, a brain that was not functioning correctly, head trauma, perfectionism, negative thinking, all of these factors came together and it really became the perfect storm for me. 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I found myself in a really deep, deep depression. And it was so bad, I couldn't even eat, I couldn't talk, and I couldn't sleep. My body was alive, but there wasn't any life within me. I couldn't stop thinking about ending the pain by ending my life. And so I was hospitalized. I was put on antidepressants and I was sent home 3 days later after I promised the doctor that I wouldn't hurt myself. But I lied. There is a picture of me standing on the Golden Gate Bridge when I was about 11 years old. And I had had the best day in San Francisco with my best friend. We went to Ghirardelli Square and we went to Pier 39 and ate clam chowder in steaming sourdough bread bowls. And on the bridge, my hair was blowing in the wind and I had this massive smile on my face. Never would I have imagined that the summer after my first hospitalization, I would grab my car keys and sneak out of my house and head off to the same bridge to try to end my life by jumping off. I was driving recklessly and I was getting close to the bridge and I got a flat tire and I just sat in my car paralyzed and I didn't know what to do. And then suddenly there was a knock on my window and this silver-haired, kind-hearted man came and he asked me if he could call for roadside assistance and help me. And there was a single bumper sticker on his car that said Navy. And my brother had just started school at the Naval Academy. And after not talking to anyone for weeks, I asked him if he had served in the Navy. And I ended up having a real conversation with that man. My tire was fixed and it just gave me a little hope in my heart. And so I returned to my family. Things really got worse that summer. I was accepted to a really prestigious university on the East Coast, 3,000 miles away. And so I went along with it, but I really couldn't even decide if I wanted to live or die. And I had to go back home and I was hospitalized again for 3 weeks. And all these things I placed my identity and my value and my worth in were really taken from me. And as the medication was really beginning to help and really lift me out of that depression, I asked for a Bible and I had never read the Bible in my whole life. And I turned to the stories of Jesus and I saw that he loved the broken and he came to offer them hope and healing. One day, we went into the hospital chapel, and as a woman sang Amazing Grace, I was just overwhelmed by the invisible but supernatural love of Christ. And through a whispered prayer, I surrendered my life to him and I decided that I was going to stop living for myself and that I was going to live for God. I went back to college and was doing well for a while, but my sophomore year, the depression returned with a vengeance. I just felt so abandoned by God because I thought that when I gave my life to him, I wouldn't have any more troubles or I would never struggle with mental health issues again. And it just left me feeling really hopeless. And one day I came across a prayer in the book of Psalms. It was Psalm 139, verse 14. It says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. And fearfully meaning lovingly and reverently made. And after reading that psalm, it was like, I have been waiting my entire life to hear that I wasn't an accident, that there was a God who intentionally and lovingly created me with awe and dignity and purpose, and that I was so loved and held by God. And right then, I knew that Wonderfully Made was the name of a movement president of an organization that I was supposed to create. And from the very beginning, I had big dreams for it. And today, 20 years later, we're still going, and our mission is to help teen girls and young women know their God-given value, identity, purpose, and experience vibrant mental health and lead flourishing lives. I do work really, really hard every day to do all that I can do to protect my joy and my mental health. After you have an experience like that, where you really could have lost your life, you begin to see every second as sacred. Today, 1 in 3 teen girls are seriously contemplating attempting suicide. And, it's time that we actually do something about it. There's a lot of talk about what social media does to our mental health and how it's not good for us. But we have agency, and we don't have to use it in a way that causes insecurity or depression or anxiety. Like, I love giving my free tip that I think will make everyone's life better who uses it. And this is what I did just over 12 years ago. I just took all the apps off my phone and I have them on my iPad. And that has changed everything. And, our brains are an organ like any other part of our body. And because of so many different factors, they can be unwell. And we have to have compassion on ourselves and know that as we meditate on things that are true and good and lovely, God can actually heal those neural pathways in our brain. We can live better lives of gratitude and wholeness, and live them to the fullest without any regrets. If you are listening and you can relate to my story, or you're having these dark thoughts, I just want to encourage you to tell someone safe and that you love immediately, and not keep this to yourself. And just be encouraged that so many people like myself have been in that place. You're not broken. You have been chosen. You are so valuable and loved, and God has a hope and a future for you. And this isn't the end of your story. There is hope. Jesus Listens, February 27th. Regal Jesus, you are my best friend as well as my king. I want to walk hand in hand with you through my life. Please help me face whatever today brings: pleasures, hardships, adventures, disappointments, relying on you each step of the way. I know that nothing is wasted when it's shared with you. Thank you, Lord, for giving me the ability to stay conscious of you while walking along dusty, earthbound paths. As your word declares, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. In your awesome name, amen.
To learn more about Allie Marie Smith, visit wonderfullymade.org, and be sure to check out Allie's new book, Social Media Reset, a 30-day guided journey to unplug, reconnect with God, and reclaim your joy at your favorite retailer. If you'd like to hear more stories about navigating sorrow, check out our interview with Jay Lauder. Next time on the Jesus Calling podcast, we'll hear from David Thomas and Sissy Goff, co-executive directors of Daystar Counseling in Nashville. They share ways they help children navigate big feelings like anxiety, self-doubt, and jealousy, and how they help them learn emotional regulation techniques to help prepare them for adulthood.
We certainly want to help kids develop in that space of just not pushing those feelings down, but really working through those strong emotions and arming kids with an understanding that, God has equipped us with these amazing abilities, with something, for example, as simple as breathing, that I could begin to slow down my heart rate. And so we love teaching kids about how God made our brains and bodies, and that He's given us these extraordinary abilities to do that settling, but it takes some work.
Thanks for listening to the Jesus Calling Stories of Faith podcast on the Life Audio Network. Every week, we'll bring you stories from people who share their journeys of faith and how prayer and a relationship with God transformed their lives. Be sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And leave us a review so others can be inspired weekly by these stories of faith. Finally, you can find encouragement, resources, and more on the Jesus Calling website at jesuscalling.com.